I like Touhou. The gameplay, the music, the large amount of memes that spawn from it, and if you clicked on this video, you probably do too. Or maybe you're someone I know and was forced to watch this, or you're watching out of curiosity. But most of all, I like the characters, and well, Touhou does have a lot. Every one of them having their own personalities and traits that make them unique in their own way. This is what we call a characterization. If you are still confused, then let me make a quick example. This is Reimu. On the outside, she is an average Miko that works at a shrine, but in terms of characterization, she's known as mostly easygoing, lazy, and open-minded. The way Reimu looks is like the vessel for her actual character. If Reimu was some crazy hyperactive yokai exterminator, I think the story of any Touhou game would change drastically. However, what if instead of taking away the traits that make Reimu, well, Reimu, what if we added more or just stretched the meaning of some of these traits in general? This is Cirno and Reimu's 1, 2, 3, made by Kamo Nari or Honey Sakura. This is a Touhou fan doujin that focuses on Reimu and Cirno and the eternal struggle known as love. This video will have major spoilers for the plot and story of Cirno and Reimu's 1, 2, 3. Also, before I tell you to go read this comic yourself, I should probably say that this comic isn't actually complete. The last chapter came out on April 9th, 2013, and is said by the creator to be fully cancelled. But nothing is impossible, so if you want to join me at the Lake of Denial, then feel free to do so. Now that I've warned you, I now can say that I highly recommend reading the original doujin if you have not. Now, with all that being said, let's get started on the analysis. The first chapter is half exposition, introducing you to some of our characters. Cirno, Remilia, Flandre, Meiling, Patchouli, Reimu, Sakura, and even Kawakuma for a panel. Basically everyone from Touhou 6. However, the main characters to remember are Cirno, Reimu, and Remilia. The other half of this chapter is mostly comedy. Chapter 2 starts on a pretty hard note, with Cirno showing more emotion than just pride. She's sad and discouraged, which is a pure contrast to how she's depicted in most fan works. But she puts on a facade for Rumia when she walks into the room. The day doesn't get much better, as after losing to Reimu, Cirno decides to quit Danmaku and cut herself off from Reimu entirely. Only a day later though, Cirno realizes her mistake, but she doesn't know how to make up. However, after a forced therapy session with Remilia and Patchouli, along with some words of encouragement from Team 9, she goes back to meet Reimu the next day, who seem to also be distraught about the whole situation, but the two are able to make up. Chapter 2.05. I don't have too much to say about this, as it's a mini chapter put at the end of chapter 2, which I feel isn't the best spot for it. It would probably fit better in between chapter 4 and 5, but I digress. The chapter starts with a bunch of familiar faces chatting with each other while Cirno listens to the radio. While doing this, Cirno picks up on the fact that everyone but her has a last name. After some thinking, two ideas spring into her mind. Cirno the strongest, and Cirno Hakure, which would imply these two are married, which they aren't. Yet, Reimu says with a cigar in her mouth. Also, here's the story for the two panels she's in. When did she get here? I don't know. Chapter 3 begins with Reimu and Marisa relaxing at the shrine for some time, until Cirno quite literally decides to make her presence known.
Stand ready for my arrival, worm.
In which Reimu runs off to make herself look presentable. After Reimu makes her long-awaited appearance, both her and Cirno spend the rest of the day together. While this is happening, Reimu's having some extreme emotional turmoil. Before Cirno leaves, Reimu ends up asking if the two of them could go out for a picnic next time they meet, in which Cirno agrees. After Cirno departs, Marisa ends up asking what we all want to know. Do you love Cirno? One time skip later and we arrive at the day of the picnic. Unfortunately, Cirno forgot, which only creates problems as Reimu is left with her thoughts for a while. Thankfully, Marisa was able to give Cirno a ride, but at this point, Reimu was so in her own head about how she truly felt about Cirno. But the two of them make up quickly, not before Reimu pump fakes us into thinking she confessed though. Chapter 1. The chapter that was meant to be a short one-off doujin until 11 months and 22 days later, roughly. The chapter starts with Reimu sitting at the Hakure shrine waiting for Cirno, who eventually shows her face for a game of Danmaku. She is also accompanied by Rumia. But if we know Cirno, we know how this battle ends. Cirno departs extremely pissed, but soon after, she comes up with the plan to get back. The next day, Reimu begins to worry if what she said was too much, but the thoughts go from worry to lustful. Thankfully, Rumiya cuts off Reimu's thoughts before we get to hear the rest of them. Rumiya arrives alone to inform Reimu of Cirno's whereabouts. As it turns out, Cirno has come up with a sickness that even Eren cannot cure. This revelation makes Reimu break down in tears while everyone in the room is overcome by guilt. Even after Rumiya confesses saying that everything happening was a prank, Reimu pushes it off as Rumiya trying to just bring up the mood. After a couple of seconds, Cirno quickly sits up, trying to tell Reimu the whole sick thing was a trick, but she is shut up after being hugged by Reimu. After Reimu confirms Cirno's alright, Reimu leans in and...
Thought this was a game?
911.
Officer! Right there! FBI! Come on in!
When Reimu finally breaks away from Cirno, she begins to confess her feelings, but in fear of being subjected to another 30 seconds of... you know. Cirno puts up her hand saying to stop, and it was all a prank. After figuring this out, Reimu quickly changes to pissed off, but lets it slide because nothing happened. Yeah, I don't know about that. Aiden also decides to show her face again, and she immediately starts instigating, causing Reimu to snap and knock everyone out. Along with bringing them to Kane to have their memories erased. Chapter 4 starts with Reimu thinking to herself over something totally not important. After a couple seconds, Marisa catches on that something is troubling Reimu, and after some counseling, Marisa leaves with multiple layers of emotional damage, but not before giving Reimu some advice. Along with saying a festival is being held at the Moria Shrine tomorrow. The next night, Marisa seemingly holds an entire operation to help Cirno and Reimu get closer to each other, which does end up working. Cirno and Reimu take a seat on a bench and begin talking amongst each other, realizing how much they truly appreciate each other. Right before Reimu confesses, a firework goes off, cutting her off, then causing her to reconsider even asking in the first place. Cirno catches on and comforts Reimu. After calming down, Reimu asks for some advice, saying that she has someone she likes, but she doesn't know how to confess. So she asks Cirno if she should do it, but Cirno bursts out saying not to due to Cirno also loving Reimu, and the idea of someone being more important scares her. The night ends with the two of them walking off, holding hands. Chapter 5 starts with Reimu wakes up to see Cirno is already at the shrine and she wants to spend the day with her. Reimu the entire time is just trying to keep her emotions in check as they keep flaring up anytime Cirno clings or hugs her. This ultimately ends in a misunderstanding. Reimu, Marisa, and Sane chat amongst each other, just trying to get Reimu to confess and get married.
Say Drake, I hate you like I'm young.
One interesting dinner later, and Reimu's off to take a bath. And after one look at Cirno's face, Marisa and Sane realize that Cirno might have the same feelings, but it quickly gets nowhere, and with that, Marisa and Sane take their leave, not before leaving behind a note for Reimu. Also, Amelia's kind of here. She's watching from a distance, looking at her lover and good friend being together. So that's kind of rough. But she's handling it alright. When we cut back to Cirno and Reimu, they are happily enjoying some watermelon. While this is happening, Cirno ends up asking Reimu who she actually likes. Reimu ends up saying that if Cirno can beat her in Danmaku one time, then she promises to tell her. Suddenly, Yukari shows up out of nowhere, saying very few words before... Chapter 6. This chapter is kind of an oddball due to it not being about Cirno and Reimu's relationship, but rather Yukari and Yuyuko's. However, this doesn't follow the normal Yuyuko we know, but rather a much younger version, and one that is also living. It starts with the two of them simply meeting each other in a small village. Yukari ends up taking interest in Yuyuko due to the souls that float around her. They both form a small bond after this. The time Yukari would visit changed to be more often after finding out Yuyuko was lonely. The next time Yukari visits though, it said that Yuyuko lost her father, and as said by Yukari, the Yuyuko she knew died that day. The cheer she had was gone. After this, Yukari began seeing Yuyuko daily, and after some time, the smile she lost returned to her face, but it soon became clear that things aren't getting any better for the village. Yukari convinces Yuyuko to move due to what has been happening in the village, but even after moving, things don't get better. After some time, the village Yuyuko and Yukari moved to began to fall sick. It doesn't take long for Yuyuko to pick up on the fact that she might be the reason for this. Yukari objects, but she knows that Yuyuko is the reason for the death and sickness of both villages. The two go back home to the desolate village, but not before death claims Yuyuko's friend's mother. This was the last straw for Yuyuko, as the moment the cherry blossoms begin to bloom, Yuyuko makes the decision that life isn't worth living anymore. Yuyuko's final wish is to be buried underneath the tree to stop any more death. Yukari tries to convince her to stop, but nothing gets through to Yuyuko. She thanks Yukari for everything before taking her own life. The chapter ends with us cutting back to the ending of chapter 5. Chapters 7, 8, and 9. I'm putting all these chapters together because these chapters all together make up a total of 46 pages, which is a little longer than chapter 4 and 5 at 44 pages, but a little shorter than chapter 1 at 50. After being gapped by Yukari, Cirno finds herself in an empty void, along with no recollection of what happened and why she's even there. We then cut back to Yukari and Reimu. Yukari during this time talks about Reimu and her duties as the Shrine Maiden. If she is to forget them, only the worst would await Gensokyo. Reimu protests, but Yukari quickly objects, saying that Cirno's changed Reimu, for the worse. I beg you, give me back Cirno. Okay? I'll return her since you insist so much. Really? Yes. After all, I'm not an Oni. Although I have one condition. Condition? Defeat me. After Reimu and Yukari make this deal, we cut back to Cirno, who seems to be exhausted after seeming to have been on the move for a while now. But she soon runs into an object of sorts, but it turns out to be a hat that Kane has been wearing. Kane and Cirno do some catching up, and after handing Cirno a picture of herself, Kane's suspicions are correct. She lost her memories, except for one. We then cut to the SDM with Saki looking outside, spotting the commotion at the shrine. Within seconds, Remilia and Saki are off to go get help, as Yukari fighting Reimu is abnormal. We then cut to Reimu, who seems to be holding up pretty poorly. Right after, we then cut to Marisa, who seems to have gathered a group of people to help fight Yukari, mainly because the two of them are fighting directly and Cirno is missing. And within a couple seconds, they are off. When we cut back to Cirno and Kane... When Cirno remembers that day, she asks Kane what the plan is. In simple terms, she needs to find Reimu, while also keeping that memory in her head, so finding Reimu is even possible. And soon enough, she's off. The final panel shows off Reimu, who is just trying to hold out. And with that, the final chapter ends. That's it, the final panel of Cirno and Reimu's 1, 2, 3. Leaving with a huge cliffhanger. Now some of you may wonder, why the freak did this guy bring up characterization at the start? Well, remember when I said what if we added or stretched character traits? Well, I did that because I think Cirno and Reimu's 1, 2, 3 does a great job of stretching and adding, while also not being too out of character. But due to how the story is written, it works really well. Now as the reader, we are left to interpret the ending. But personally, I believe that what would have lied ahead would have been great. Maybe a fight where Yukari goes all out but falls to the hands of Cirno after a surprise appearance. Either way, I see Cirno and Reimu reuniting, finally being able to live life together to the fullest. But that's just my interpretation. After all, the story isn't complete, and everyone has their own thoughts and ideas, so feel free to theorize. But with all that being said, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the future. Goodbye.